Okay, so now that we have our paper mold made, we're gonna move on to the next step, which is to lay your clay down and start building the base of your ceramic mask. Okay, so a few tools that I've gathered that I might use in this process. I have a rolling pin. I have a sharp cutting tool. This could be a lot of things, but I have a fettling knife and then some newspaper we might use too. Okay, so to start, I want to start out with a pretty big chunk of clay. When I'm starting projects like this, I always know that if I have too much, it's not a huge deal. I can always cut off the extra. If I don't have enough, then I'm going to run into some issues. And so for this, I'm going to be laying a nice big slab of clay over my mold. If it's too small or if it's too thin, it's going to cause me issues. So I do want to start with extra. I can always cut it off later. Okay. So of course, whenever we start a clay project, we're going to wedge for quite a while, and that's to get out a lot of those air bubbles and create a nice consistency of our clay. Okay, so let's get some wedging in. Remember, as a reminder, I'm always going to start by rolling the clay away from myself and then tipping it back up on its toe and rolling away. Okay, and I'm just going to repeat that process. Shouldn't be sticking to the table. If it is, I'm pressing too hard. Okay. We should be getting a nice spiral in our clay. That's a good sign. All right, now when the clay gets too wide, I can't push it anymore. I'm just going to flip it and then repeat. Flip it and repeat. Okay, so again, like I've said, I've wedged this clay for a bit before I started the video, so this is a pretty good amount of wedging for me. You might want to wedge for a bit more. Okay, now I know that I want to be covering my paper mold with a nice big slab. I also want to think about the thickness of my slab, probably about the thickness of my thumb. All right, and we'll test that later. And so let's just get going. Now, some of you have used the slab roller in the past. You can use that again if you feel comfortable with that. For this, I'm not really worried about like perfect consistency of thinness, right? Because it's a sculpture, you really won't be able to tell. So I'm just looking for like a nice quick slab. Okay, so for that I can actually just start by using my rolling pin. I actually like to just hammer it out. Okay, starting to thin it out. I also flip it every now and again. If I were just to keep hammering it, it would stick to the table eventually, okay? So I'm gonna pick it up. All right, and now I actually just use the table. If I pick it up and smack it against the table, it's gonna start to spread out. See that, how my slab is getting a little bit bigger? Okay, as I pick it up, I'm really cautious. I use all 4 fingers like this to hold onto the slab. And I'm just stretching it out slowly. And you can see it's getting bigger, right? Now, some of you may want to take your rolling pin and roll it out. You can do that. For this, I don't really think it's necessary. If you do want to use your rolling pin and we use it on the bare table, it is going to stick. So we probably want to roll out a nice big sheet of newspaper to roll on that. That'll work better. But for this, honestly, I'm really not super concerned with perfect consistency. Okay, and you can always test, right? So I feel like this is a pretty good size. Okay, I'm gonna bring my mold over again, redefine the chin a little bit. And this would be the brow line, right where my eye line is. Okay, and this just has to fit. So I'm gonna pick up my slab, gently lay it on top of my mold. Okay, and I like to work from the middle out. Okay, so just give some gentle pressure, trying to have that clay meet the mold. We want to go all the way down to the table. Tuck it in there in the edges. Okay, and that looks pretty good. Again, a very general outline. We're not going for break just yet. Okay, now some people actually like this ring if that's part of your design. Maybe you have some appendages coming off the face or whatever. We can cut this into any design we want and leave it on there. Most people are going to cut off that ring of clay. And so when I do that, where'd my knife go? Here. Okay, I'm just going to get rid of this extra. Remember, we used a lot of clay to start. I said extra is always okay, and so we're going to cut off that extra now. We don't need it, okay? So when I do this, just be cautious. I've seen a lot of students get to this stage and they're going to cut off too much. If you get too close to your mold and cut, then the edges of your mold are going to be really, really thin and tend to break later. I'm actually going to leave just a little bit more than I think I'll need, and I can trim it off later once the clay's hardened up a bit, okay? So I'm going to stand up for this. Just going to go around, leaving just a little rim around. Okay, and there you go. There's my mold. Okay.